morning. Today is September 4th, 2025, and the time is 11 a.m. My name is Deb Blavin. I am the Contract and Procurement Specialist, and with me today I have the Selection Advisory members. Would you guys like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Frankie Kirkpatrick, Community Development Director.
Tracy Pollard, Deputy Town Manager.
Jeff Hauge, Community Services Director.
We also have 4 representatives from Tetra Tech with us today. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech, Regional Manager.
Eric Fye, Senior Project Manager with Tetra Tech.
Mason Lundquist, Project Engineer with Tetra Tech.
I'm Tyler Wainwright. I'm an engineer with Tetra Tech.
Great, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the interview process for the RFP-25-09-AD, the Fort Myers Beach Engineering and Architectural Services for the North Island Water Tower. The North Island Water Tower complex was severely damaged by Hurricane Ian, leaving the town dependent on a single remaining potable water tower. This project is critical. The town needs a Florida licensed professional engineering firm to provide engineering, design, permitting, and construction oversight services for the rehabilitation of the water tower. The project is funded in part or in whole by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR. We will start with a series of questions with Tetra Tech to ensure Tetra Tech is the right fit for this project. Tetra Tech was the only company that submitted a complete proposal. So right now we're going to start with the questions that we have, and please feel free to ask questions in between if you have more. We just have a set of questions. Danny, can you please provide your background with Tetra Tech, and can you give us your position, your background, how long you've been with the company, and your expertise?
Yes, and to help you guys if you want to follow along, I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation. So this is actually the second question on there. So if you'll flip through, where you'll see it says number 2, what is Danny Nelson's position, background. So just a little bit about me, my role. I am a vice president with the company and operations manager for Southwest Florida operations for infrastructure. I was born and raised in Southwest Florida. The only time I've been away is my 5 years at Florida State for education, where I graduated in '96. I've been with Tetra Tech basically ever since. So my 29-year anniversary is the 16th of September. So it just means I'm old. So that's how long I've been here. And regarding my expertise, the division of Tetra Tech that we're in is government infrastructure. So that has primarily been public utilities, water treatment, wastewater treatment, pipelines, pump stations such as this. So that's what I've focused on, is what we're here to talk about today.
All right, Eric, can you provide the same information?
Sure. Again, Eric Fye, Senior Project Manager. I've been with Tetra Tech for 3.5 years. Before that, I worked for Collier County Public Utilities as a Principal Project Manager in Utility Planning. And prior to that, I worked in growth management doing utilities review for Collier County. I've also worked in land development and a regional firm in Louisiana for a few years, but since 2005, except for those 3 years in Louisiana, I've been practicing in Florida. So I'm a licensed Florida PE, licensed in 2007, 23 years total experience.
Perfect, thank you. Tyler, do you want to give us a little bit of background? Or?
Sure. So my name is Tyler Wainwright. I'm an engineer at Tetra Tech. Also went to Florida State, graduated in 2009, and I've been working at Tetra Tech ever since. So the majority of my career has been public utilities infrastructure as well, and worked with the town since 2012, I think we started working here, when I started working here. So that's my experience.
Perfect. Mason?
Yeah, I've been working for Tetra Tech for about 3.5 years. I graduated from FGCU with my bachelor's in 2022 in civil engineering, and then I just graduated with my master's last year, and then recently became a licensed professional engineer this year.
Congratulations.
And I also had an org chart and then a little bit other information on some of our key people, but you could read that later, of course, if you want.
Okay. And I think we'll get in to see who's going to, would also support this project.
Yep, there'll be a lot of questions, I think, on that.
Well, that was our next question. Support staff. Other than you guys, what kind of support would you give the town on the water tower project?
So you'll see on that org chart, we listed out individuals who are key members of the different disciplines, and they're selected for various reasons. I think one of the questions that will come up is, or a couple of questions, this will be specific to CDBG and the funding, as well as teaming partners that may be minority-owned, women-owned, or veteran-owned. So you see our support staff that we do have Angie Brewer and Associates on our team. They're currently working with the town on Tier 1. Also Stella Molnar, who has worked off and on for the town for, gosh, probably over 15 years. And then Artem and Associates is geotechnical. So I've listed the key individuals within each one. Some of those are obviously here today. In addition, on that next page, you'll see a little bit about Tyler and Mason. One I also wanted to mention is Paul Klingen. Paul is managing the Tier 1 improvements right now for the town. I'm not sure how much involvement he'll have on this project, but he's a resource that has well over 30 years of this type of experience. And prior to joining Tetra Tech, he had retired with the City of Cape Coral, and he was over their utilities expansion program, and he was their public works director and oversaw $1 billion worth of improvements. So been a great resource since he's been here. On the following page, you'll see I've listed some others. Sachin Zhu. Sachin's been with us, gosh, over 6 years now. Bachelor's from UF, master's from FGCU. She and Mason graduated, I think, the same time. So in addition to pipeline, storage, and pump stations, she's also taken an interest and has done a lot of hydraulic modeling. So she's done modeling for the town. So she'll be very key in helping us sizing of pumps and that sort of thing. Jason Signoret, who has also done work for the town, currently doing work related to the interim improvements to the Moss Marina booster station until it gets replaced and moved off island. Jason's an electrical engineer, so has a lot of experience here, over 17 years with Tetra Tech. And then on our sub side, I've listed Mark Brewer. For those that don't know Mark, grew up in the industry. Angie Brewer and Associates. Angie started the company back, gosh, I think I worked with her first about when I started doing work out on Sanibel. So Mark grew up in the industry and has a significant amount of experience specifically related to CDBG and HUD compliance. And then Brianna Smith, I've listed her because she's been with Solomon over 10 years, and she's also done a lot of work here in Southwest Florida. So
Mark would be also when we have to start doing reporting and all the compliance for CDBG, DR.
Mark and Kristen, yes.
Okay. Great. Can you let us know what projects Tetra Tech has worked on for the town?
Yeah, so question 5 in there, did you see it? Apologize, this is a lot of just trying to remember off the top of my head, but we've been serving the town. It's been over 15 years now, which is a long time. Started back with Kathy Lewis, if anybody remembers, heard that name, but anyhow, we've done, I know it's over 100, I think it's over 150 million of primarily stormwater and potable water improvements associated with the major improvements along Estero Boulevard that was joint with the county, and then the majority of your side streets, and now working on Tier 1. And of course, we provide a lot of support role on a lot of minor stuff with stormwater and utility infrastructure, your MPDS permitting, master planning we've assisted with your stormwater utilities. So just a lot of efforts there over the years. Currently, we're working on design for Carlos Circle drainage improvements. We're nearing the end of the Tier 1. CVU's been added to that. And then, of course, continuing with those support roles that I've mentioned.
On the potable water, what projects were those?
So
were they residential areas, or were they?
Both transmission and residential. Okay. So one of the main things was when Estero Boulevard was being upgraded by the county to address, not only access, but primarily a lot of the flooding you had. The town took the opportunity to do two things: to replace the existing line, which had a lot of asbestos cement, but also to separate that line out. So it made the main line a true transmission line that would provide that pressure but added a secondary line that would serve as a service line to all of the side roads and to the businesses along Estero Boulevard. So that was one of the main things. And then, gosh, at this point, virtually all of your side streets, primarily on the bay side, have been improved with both potable water and stormwater. So we've worked on the majority of that.
And for the record, does Tetra Tech does hold a current Florida license because you provided it for me here.
Yeah, and I made copies there on the following page of that so everybody can see. But yes, we have not lapsed. We are good.
Yeah, so that's
if only we'd asked before this.
Well, and you did provide it in your bid also, but we needed that for the record.
Yeah, it's there.
How does Tetra Tech plan to design a structure to withstand the recovery of natural disasters, climate control, or climate changes, ensure the continuity of essential services? 'Cause right now we're still operating on one potable tank.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in a few different ways, and I'll first start with what's not on the following pages. But you've been limping along for the last 3 years now since Ian. We're currently working on interim improvements for Moss Marina, and that just that takes time. That's primarily pump replacement, but the pumps have to be rebuilt. That'll provide you a lot of relief and a lot of not so many sleepless nights for you. The second thing that'll actually help with that is the full replacement of the Moss Marina. But even with that interim, it'll give you that ability that you can now fully go into that north and sleep at night and know you can address what you need to address because you've got a reliable station that can provide that pressure. It won't provide that storage, but it'll provide that pressure. So now I'll actually answer the question on how we'll approach this. But first and foremost, you got to comply with your regulations. So you've got your local, state, and federal. On the local, we're pretty much going to be looking at what the town will require from the development order side. On the state, we've got to adhere to FDEP's, it's 62-555, which is for potable water infrastructure. So there's a number of things there. Primary thing is going to be this site as a critical asset will need to have emergency power. You've provided emergency power in the past by portable, so that will need to change most likely to permanent, which is what you would want. And then in addition to that, some other things like your redundancy, pressures, things like that. What will be most challenging, but also helps with that hardening, is going to be the federal requirements. So first of all is the FEMA flood requirement. You're currently at elevation 4.0. In addition to that, on the 2 pages back, two pages forward, you'll see that there's also the coastal construction control line that partially runs through the site. So regarding the FEMA flood elevation, the elevation is currently at about 4. Flood elevation is about 12. This is an essential facility. On the next page, you'll actually see a table, and that will require that your critical items, your mechanical and your electrical, be built to comply with flood elevation plus either +2 or whatever the 500 years. So let's just, for the sake of this, say +2. So that means you're going to have to be at elevation 14. So you're going to have to be 10 feet above grade. Your existing structure is at that, but your pumps are currently at grade. So you're going to have to either move those up to within that building, which I know there's room. I'm not sure of the structural soundness of that building. I know the stairways had issues, but you're also going to have to add either a generator or a diesel pump up as well.
On the existing?
On the existing. So what you're going to end up doing is either having to add the diesel pump, 99% sure can't go inside that building. So you're either going to have to add on to that, or you might even be looking at tearing that whole structure down and building new. That may end up being the most cost effective. So anyhow, those are some of the challenges you're going to have to do associated with the pump station. In addition to that, one of the requirements of ASCE 2414, and that's the same thing you see that table on, but if you go to the next page, on the right-hand side, I show you that coastal construction. On the left side, I talk about what I just did in terms of the elevations. that red bullet with all the items below that, that's a lesser known requirement, and that's associated with your storage tank itself. So ASCE 2414 9.7.1.3 requires you to address anchoring of your tank if you're in a flood zone such as this. That basically means it won't float away. It's like a swimming pool.
Is that a new requirement since
That has
Ian?
been, not since Ian, I believe it's been in effect about 10 years. So there are many tanks in Southwest Florida, and many of those tanks were not required to meet this. So, yeah, it was about that, that was about that time. So I knew it was in the last 10 years. I couldn't find an exact date. So what that means is you got two options. One is you can either elevate it, so we can bring that structure, make your neighbors really happy and bring it up to that elevation 12 to the bottom of the tank, or you can anchor it. Anchor it by either putting a lot of concrete in the bottom or by putting actual anchors in the bottom. We're currently working on two projects this way in Southwest Florida. Tyler is the project manager of one of those, and it's for Collier County at Goodland. They're replacing their tank. It's over 40 years old. It was on wood pilings previously. They're going to tear it down completely and build like this site. It's it's limited on the area that they have. So they're going to tear it down completely, get water from Marco Island for a period of time, and then they're going to build back. So they're actually going to anchor that tank. So that's what is that, 1.5?
That one is a 750,000.
750,000. So the second one is Charlotte Harbor that I mentioned there, and it is just north of the Peace River, nearly identical to what we're seeing here in terms of the elevations. And the anchoring system they decided to use there is actually a ballast, so they're actually putting several feet of concrete in the bottom of that. So those are really your options. So continue with that. You're also going to have to be looking at pump selection. Really, your primary options are what they call a vertical turbine pump. That's what you have at the Moss Marina site, and that's what you had purchased previously for that Moss Marina replacement, and what you have now, which are horizontal. They're split case. Now, the split case that you have there are fine for what you had historically, because they're basically a grade. Your suction wasn't, but now so you didn't have to deal with that suction roof. Now you're talking about elevating that 10 feet in the air, and you've got to deal with the suction lift. So you're going to either have some way to prime that or look at another option. So most likely you're going to be looking at using vertical turbines, which are very common. Those are probably the most popular here. And then the following page, like I said, you're also going to address standby power. Just kind of off the top of my head, I'm going to believe that a generator is going to be your better option here. Diesel pump, again, you're going to have some of those same issues being elevated with priming, so that's probably going to be eliminated, but something that needs to be looked at as an alternative. And these are some of the same things that we're looking at on the Moss Marina replacement that the county is doing, which also is a CDBG funded project, as you know.
And there's room for this generator?
Yes.
Have there been any changes with the state or federal since Ian that you'd have to meet?
I don't think there have been any changes since then. I think most of the structural changes, the major structural changes, really came after Charlie, and they've been tweaked over the last many years. But Irma had some of those other requirements, but nothing I can't think of since Ian. I mean, the building code has changed,
Yeah.
but those are things that you're typically expecting.
Okay, questions? And what lessons, and you already did a little bit, but what lessons has Tetra Tech learned from the post-disaster situations?
So I'm going to, first, and I think we do have, Angie Brewer and Associates on our team. And for those that don't know, Tetra Tech, a different division of Tetra Tech, does a lot of work related to FEMA and disaster monitoring and recovery. And I think as Frankie at least knows, following Ian, we were actually brought in directly by the state of Florida for all of Lee County to go out and do emergency assessments and to assist with getting all of the utilities up and running. So we have a lot of history and knowledge and background directly from that. So Our experience goes from the disaster response, the debris monitoring, to the post and dealing with all of these implementations. So now I want to specifically talk about the lessons learned of some of the things associated with Ian. So I did talk about that work we did for the state of Florida. But the biggest thing that I saw in my 52 years having been here was this storm was unlike any storm that we've had. And that was that storms in the past had a lot of wind. They've talked about surge for years and years and years, but never really came to fruition. But this was the storm that actually brought that surge. So in my opinion, I believe most of that damage that we had isn't necessarily from wind, but from surge. And even this tank, we don't know what compromising this tank had from surge, from floating. Those are the things that you have from this. And it's not just, the surge doesn't just come with flooding and damage you have from that salt water and just normal flooding, but it's that ability to anchor it. So lessons learned is how you harden to deal with not so much the wind, but how you anchor these structures so that they can be there. And then also, you already had the requirements in place for allowing water to move through for breakaway panels and things like that. But that's probably the biggest one, is addressing the hardening from that surge standpoint.
This is off topic, well, not really, but Tetra Tech, when you're, looking at different processes and stuff, where do you test, like, your anchoring, and do you have a test facility that you would?
Well, no, we're designing, so we're working, let's say in this case, yeah, let's say in this case, really it's the tank that I would be most concerned about. So our structural engineers will follow the requirements of the law, in addition with our geotechnical engineers, who will be taking data down to probably 50 plus feet at multiple locations. There's guidelines in place for, if you have a tank of this size, how many borings you take, what depth. So the structural engineer will then be working with a tank manufacturer. So this will be a publicly bid project. So we're working with a tank manufacturer. It doesn't mean that tank manufacturer gets the project. It's got to be publicly bid. There are typically 2 tank manufacturers in the state of Florida. We would be working with one or both, and understanding what the alternatives are, the costs are, and the pricing.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at, okay. Let's go back to question 7, because we kind of bypassed it, but we'll touch on it a little bit here. In your PowerPoint, under compliance and regulation standards, under federal, you do have funding, CDBG-DR, and then the Davis-Bacon wage rates. So I just want to make sure we put that out for the record.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is more in the presentation about that specifically. So
yeah, that's just a big one. So I didn't want to miss that on that.
Yes, thank you.
Has Tetra Tech worked on FEMA CDBG-DR projects in the past, which you've already talked about, but can you expand?
Yeah, so quite a bit. We've done projects in Lee, Collier, and Charlotte. We're currently working on the Moss Marina Booster Station, which I've mentioned. We're also working with City of Sanibel on hardening for lift stations. In addition to that, we hold a continuing contract with the Florida Department of Environmental, or FDEM, Florida Department of Emergency Management. Also, now again, this is, we do work all over the country. So one of my engineers recently completed a shoreline restoration project. But I don't want to just highlight what we've done, because we do have our partner Angie Brewer and Associates, and they have 30 plus years of experience on that compliance side. From the design side, yes, we've done it, and those are places where we've done it. But I think more importantly is making sure that you're adhering to everything regarding Davis-Bacon, your BABA requirements, Buy American, Build American. So on that next slide, I do talk about some of specifically Angie Brewer and Associates. So they have, and I said 20 plus, I bet if I put 100 plus on there, I wouldn't be lying. Projects throughout Florida, Wauchula, Everglades City, Collier, Bartow, St. Lucie County. Mark Brewer personally has done CDBG projects over 30 years. And he's also recognized as a state subject, matter expert. He's testified to that. So we're very, happy to partner with them on that. On the following page, I don't need to go into it, but I also list some of those requirements that you would, that will have to go on during this, and it's related to the quarterly performance reporting. Some of those things you got to do, and again, I mentioned that Buy American, Build American, the Davis-Bacon wage, and that follows obviously all the way through to construction. And during your development of your bid package was making sure you have the prevailing wage rates current, for the type of project current to that bid, current timeline, and those must be adhered to. And then of course, utilizing the meebie-weebies that we've committed to as well.
Okay, thank you. And then this is best, you kind of already answered it, but the technical competency of Tetra Tech and construction procurement, quality awareness, compliance, HUD, CDBG-DR.
I'll go into some of that though, some more of that. I mean, this is hopefully what, some of the stuff that I've shown, we do have this. This is what we do. This is our bread and butter. So specifically regarding storage tanks and booster stations, I counted just in my head over 20 storage tanks that we've either improved or designed new tanks since I've been with the company, and at least that many on pump stations. So that process that we go through is not just our experience and expertise and history, but every project, regardless of how small, goes through a QA/QC process and constructability process. So we'll be looking at timing, we'll be looking at what are required to take things down, and is it something that's actually feasible. Then moving into that procurement, like I was talking about, any supplemental conditions that would be required by CDBG to be in the documents for the contractor to adhere to. And I mentioned those prevailing wage rates because we've had projects that we had the prevailing wage rates in and the project got delayed, and they update those quarterly or whatever it is. And you just got to make sure you have the most recent time of bid, because that's what the contractor will be required to adhere to. Then when you get on that construction side, obviously making sure all those submittals, the BABA requirements there is that not only do the submittals match that, but when it comes in the field, that what's delivered is actually adhering to what was said to be in the submittal. And that goes down on the implementation and compliance side. And of course, that's where Angie Brewer and Associates shines, because they do this day in and day out.
Yeah, it's very important. We stay on target with all of our reporting, the procurement file, we follow everything to the letter for CDBG-DR.
And real quick, on the next page, I actually listed this because it is a requirement of FEMA, and I think a lot of it goes with probably more common sense, but it is an 8-step process that you have, and that's determining first if you're in a flood zone, and then involving the stakeholders, identifying who they are and involving them throughout it. Looking at your alternatives and how they'll impact, how they'll be impactive on the flood zone and how the flood zone will be impactive on them. Ultimately working your way through what that selected alternative is, and then communicating that with the public, and then of course through the implementation. So there's just an 8-step process that this project, as I understand, will have to go through. So I just want to identify that as well.
And the town's committed to using DBEs, WBs, and veteran-owned businesses. Will Tetra Tech be partnering with the companies that fall into these categories?
Yeah, so I've mentioned Angie Brewer and Associates and Stella Molnar. So Angie Brewer for the CDBG funding assistance compliance. They're currently working with the town. And then Stella Molnar, who's public involvement.
And Angie Brewer is a WBE, and then...
Both are WBEs.
Both are WBEs, yep. Okay. And then in your bid, you did provide your references on that. What is the time frame that you think this project will take?
My guess, once you get through negotiations, the design for something like this is honestly probably going to take close to a year, and you're probably going to be 18 months plus on construction. The biggest thing on construction is going to be, and Tyler can talk way more about the construction. He's actually a licensed contractor too, but your biggest thing on construction is going to be your mechanical components and that generator. And what's the lead time right now on a generator?
Depends on the size, but I mean, you're definitely going to be into a custom enclosure just to get the impact rating that you're going to need for the location that you're at. So with the custom enclosure, say use a 500 kW generator somewhere in that size, you're probably looking at 50 plus weeks lead time for the generator.
So nearly a year just for that. Obviously, there are things they can be doing. The pumps aren't as long, but we're looking right now, how many?
6 months.
6 months on pumps. So, you know, you'll...
Probably realistically, with construction and lead time of materials, you're probably 18 months at least in the construction.
And there are things you can do to, you know, to expedite that. If the CDBG process would allow, you could procure those long lead item times in advance, and that does two things. It saves taxes and saves time. So if that's something that, you know, the town is interested in, that's something that you could do. But even so, while they're working through the procurement of those long lead items, there's work that can be done, you know, at the site. The tank work could start nearly immediately, and that will take, you know, several months in itself.
The way we get funded with the CDBG DR is through Lee County, and then there's several steps we have to go through with Lee County. If the town believes Tetra Tech is going to be the perfect fit, then we can get into some of the delays, and hopefully with the planning fund now, we won't have as many delays because this is a very time-sensitive project. You have any questions about what Tetra
No,
Tech?
I think I'm very familiar with Danny and the company itself, Eric, for the last couple of years.
Are you good?
Yeah, same. I know we've been working together for numerous years and have done great work for us.
Just a question on the generator. Does that have to be at a certain elevation also?
Yes, ma'am.
So that has to be above?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, if that existing structure stayed, I would envision that generator being, I don't know if you've ever been to it, but you got where Estero Boulevard is and the building sits. I know I'm hard to see. So the electrical components are away, they're between Estero and the tank. They're on the back side of the building. So right now I would envision if the building stayed, the generator would likely be built on the back side. So it'd be close to all that electrical component. So you would build a new support structure for that and then tie it in through the walls. And it would be on, like Tyler said, in its own enclosure.
Okay. The next step up is the town will have a meeting, the selection committee, and I'm sure Will want to be in there, meet and talk about this interview, and if the town believes Tetra Tech will meet our needs, we would let you know either way. And then we would call you back in for negotiations, and it's recorded, but as we talk to Josh, it will be a public meeting because we don't have a recording, so it will be a public meeting. Do you guys have any questions for us?
No, just keep us posted if there's anything else you need from us. We just appreciate the opportunity.
We appreciate you guys coming in and kind of mix up on the email so it's short notice, so we really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, so off that record is my emails. I'm only getting Tetra Tech emails. Everything else is going to junk email. So IT has tried to recreate a new profile for me. So I have to go in and check my junk email like every 10 minutes, and then unblock people. Trust me, it's a real pain in the butt.
Is that an IT question?
It is, and of course, companies the size of Tetra Tech, we have our own IT, and they've got to deal with it.
Yeah. All
Frustrating.
right, really appreciate you guys coming in. The feedback, the presentation was very good. I appreciate that. So the meeting is adjourned. It is 11:34, and thank you for everyone.